Hi, and welcome to Caterpillar Cross Stitch. My name is Ford, and in this week's video, I'm going to be talking to you about my cross-stitching game changers, the tools and techniques that have had the biggest impact on how I stitch. I'm just going to jump right in here, but before I do, I'm going to ask you to take just a second right now, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and when we're done, leave me a comment down below. Those three little things cost you nothing, but they make a really huge difference for me and for the channel, so I'd appreciate it if you take just a second and do that. Now, I've been stitching somewhere around 12 years or so, and during that time, the way I stitch and the tools that I use for stitching has changed quite a bit. And there are a few things that have had the biggest impact on me, and I'm going to talk about some of those, but if there's something that's really changed the way you stitch, leave it in the comments down below. Maybe another member of the community could benefit from your wisdom there, or maybe I'll learn something from you. Now, one of the big things that I have changed the way I stitch that just sort of happened by accident is how I load my fabric into my hoop. I used to stitch the way most people expect to, but then one day I accidentally loaded my project in my hoop upside down or inside out, or I'm not sure how exactly you would describe it, but I found some huge advantages to the way that I did it, and I decided to call that method stitching in the well as opposed to stitching on the drum. So if you look here, you can see that my fabric is actually on the bottom side of my embroidery hoop there. And there are a number of reasons I found this to be advantageous. One is that when I'm holding my project, you can see that I touch the fabric a lot less on the front of my project when I'm hanging onto my hoop. The other thing is that when it comes time to bury my thread, I now have easier access to the back side of my project. So my hoop does not get in the way of me ending my stitches. So that's a lot better for me as well. It also gives me extra ways to be able to hang on to the hoop, which allows me to relieve some of the fatigue in my hoop holding hand. So I can hold it like this, I can hold it like this, I can use my thumb hooked inside there. It just gives me more options for how to hang on to the hoop, which helps me relieve the fatigue in my hoop holding hand, which is where the pain usually starts thanks to my family curse of arthritis that makes me have to stop stitching. Now, I want to remind you right now to go and sign up for the Caterpillar Cross Stitch Stitch Club email newsletter. You'll get advance notice of any new upcoming projects, stitch-alongs, patterns, kits, that kind of stuff, in addition to finding out about things like stitching socials and stitching retreats. Plus, when you sign up, you'll get an ebook with 9 free PDF cross-stitch patterns in it, including a year-long tracker pattern. Use that to track mood, temperature, whatever you like. You'll also get a digital download of our top 10 cross-stitching tips. So make sure you hit the link down there in the description to get all of that. And the next one is one that you probably already noticed in the frame, and that is a needle minder. A needle minder is basically just 2 strong magnets, usually with something cute and decorative on the front one, that go on either side of the fabric. And then they'll hang on to the fabric so that they'll stay in place and you can move them around here. And that holds onto my needle for me when I'm not using it. Before I discovered needle minders for the first few years that I was stitching, I would do things like stick my needle through the edge of my fabric over here. But then one time I set my project down for a few weeks and I came back and that needle had permanently marred the fabric. I've also seen people get rust spots from needles that they've worn the finish off of that permanently altered their projects. I also know someone who was holding a needle in their mouth while getting the thread ready to load the next one and sneezed, and as part of the sneeze inhaled, and that needle got stuck in the back of their throat. That is a scary horror story for me, and after that I was like, I'm never holding a needle in the corner of my mouth again. So the needle minder is really, really handy for that. And another thing that opens up for me, because I have that handy little place to put a needle that I'm not using, is that it allows me to keep things like more than one size of needle. So sometimes I struggle to bury my finished threads on the back of my project. So when that's happening, I'll keep a smaller needle on hand that I'll swap out for when I go to do that part of the process. Or if I have a project that I'm doing a lot of fractional stitches, and check out my video on that topic, I'll keep a pin or a sharp needle attached to my needle minder as well, so that I can pre-punch the hole through the middle of the square before I pass my needle into it, and that makes it a lot easier to get good, precise fractional stitches. Now, another one of the big game changers for me in cross-stitching, cheesy as it might sound, is community. other people who are into the hobby and have more experience or have innovated new things. I've learned so much from, for instance, the Caterpillar cross-stitch community. There's an amazing community that has grown up around the brand, and we share pattern ideas and finish ideas and projects and tips and tricks and hacks and that kind of stuff. There's 20,000 plus people in the Caterpillar cross-stitch Facebook group, so make sure you check out that, as well as follow the Caterpillar cross-stitch Instagram. That's also another place you can find that community. Another thing that has revolutionized the way I do big and complex projects is gridding. Pre-marking certain locations, either every 10 stitches or just the edges or however makes the most sense to you, on your fabric so that you have multiple frames of reference, places to count from to prevent errors. Check out my video on gridding over here to get some more information about that. Now, another piece of equipment that has been a total game changer for me is a lap stand. This is something that I use so that I can stitch with both hands, so that I can, again, avoid having quite so much fatigue in my cross-stitch holding hand. It also is really great when I'm recording videos because the stand will hold the hoop in place so that I'm not shaking all over the place. So you also benefit from that. Now, the one that I have, I got as a gift, so I've been continuing to use it. But if I were going to buy one, I would get one of the really nice Nurge lap stands that are available from Caterpillar cross-stitch. There should be a link down there in the description. Now, the next one is a little bit more specialized of an application, but it's really changed the way that I stitch on dark colored or black fabric, and that is a ball tip needle. If you take a look here, I've got two different needles. This is a standard tapestry needle here, and then this is a ball tip needle. These are made by Sullivan. I'll try to find a link to put in the description for you. But if you look here, you can see how this one's just got a blunt tip, but this one has got a little ball, a little sphere right on the tip of it. And that little ball makes it so much easier to find your way up through the fibers without piercing the fabric or the stitches that you've already done. And I discovered that when I'm stitching on black fabric, when that little ball comes up through the surface, it catches the light and makes it a lot easier for me to see. So it's just much easier for me to find where it is that I need to bring my needle up from the back of my fabric when I'm stitching on black fabric especially. So that's a really, really handy time to use. The coating on these are a little bit thin and tends to wear out, and the needle will get a little bit scratchy. So they don't last as long as the other needles that I tend to use, which is why I usually save them for working on black fabric. Another thing that has really changed for me is how I carry my project around with me. I used to fastidiously take my project out of the hoop and roll it up and put it in a cardboard tube, and then carry around my whole floss box with me. I mean, this was back when I only had a few dozen colors. Now I have like 600, so that's not really practical. But when carrying the project with me, I wanted it to be a little bit more portable. And ultimately, I found these little boxes with movable dividers, which make my life so much easier for carrying the project with me. And it gives me a place to keep my scissors and to keep my tweezers and all my little extra needles, my seam ripper, all that stuff that I carry with me. And then it's small enough to fit in a smaller pocket in my bag that I carry around with me at all times. Now, if you are a fan and a follower of the channel, you're probably not going to be surprised by the next thing that I'm going to drag out, and that is my trusty pair of chopsticks. I use these for snacking, especially on anything with brightly colored orange dust on the outside, but it makes it so I don't have to wash my hands quite as much, and it helps keep my projects cleaner. It's just a really handy thing to have around with you. And the last game-changing technique that I'm going to talk about, again, will probably not be news to you if you are a follower and a fan of the channel. If, however, you've not seen this before, prepare to have your mind blown. And that is called loop start. Loop start is a way of starting your threads that saves you a lot of the mess of starting and stopping. So normally you just cross-stitch with 2 strands generally, and you pull those 2 strands out of your bundle of 6. With loop start, you do something a little bit different. Instead of 2 strands, you get 1 strand that is twice as long, and you leave a loop on the end, and you put both ends of that strand through your needle. So you've got 2 strands here, but those 2 strands are really only 1 piece of floss that has a loop at the end. Now, I'm going to do it as a loop start from the front, which is even a bigger game changer, even if you already know how to loop start. The way you do it is you push your needle in through the fabric with those 2 ends through there. But because we've got both ends through the needle, we wind up with a loop on the end there. So then we'll bring our needle back up to the front in the position that makes our first half stitch and pull it so that most of that goes through, but we still have that little loop on top. Then all we do is stick our needle through that loop, and pull that close to the surface of the fabric so that that little loop comes down into one of the corners of our stitch. Then we put our needle down through the same corner where that little loop is sitting, and when it comes down there, it will just kind of pop that loop down around to the back. And now, because that floss is looped around itself, we are started. We don't have to worry about any ends, and we only have to bury an end when we finish this piece of floss, so we can just get going. So it's a much tidier, easier, and faster way to start your stitching on a particular needle full of thread. So what about you? What are your biggest game changers, the tools or techniques that have most changed the way you stitch or your relationship with stitching? Leave it in the comments down below. Let's talk about it. Likewise, if you have a topic you'd like to see me cover on the channel, you can leave that in the comments as well, and I'll add it to my list and see if I can help you out with it. Other than that, I do want to thank you so much for watching. For Caterpillar Cross Stitch, my name is Ford, and I will see you next week.